Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Lady Snowblood. So this is the beginning of my new sub-series that I'm introducing to the channel called Did Quentin Tarantino Steal from This Obscure 70s Movie? Let's start there before I dive into this movie. It's impossible not to find a review of Lady Snowblood, whether it's on IMDb or Letterboxd, or, just looking up a trailer and going in the comment section without somebody somewhere mentioning Quentin Tarantino. And that is because Lady Snowblood was one of the biggest influences for his movie Kill Bill. In fact, there's one specific scene in that movie that is a direct visual reference to pretty much the entire aesthetic of Lady Snowblood, and that is the scene where Beatrix Kiddo goes one-on-one with Lucy Liu. That whole scene right there is kind of a homage or a love letter, or according to many people who love Lady Snowblood, outright thievery that Tarantino is showing in Kill Bill. Before I get into why I love Lady Snowblood and think it's a brilliant movie, I just want to say all great directors steal or pay homage or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting that Tarantino seems to get the most heat from this than any other filmmaker that I've seen, to a level that I think is outright unfair. I don't see the same level of outrage where, people are talking about Brian De Palma's rip-off Hitchcock movies, which, by the way, I love Brian De Palma. I think movies like Dressed to Kill and Body Double are great fun, that are wonderfully directed and have a lot of style and a lot of great entertainment value all around. But those movies are outright Hitchcock ripoff movies with some elements of Italian giallos. Dressed to Kill in particular is also very reminiscent of some Dario Argento movies. So, and that's just one of a million examples. One of the newest movies that I reviewed last month was Zach Cregger's Weapons. Zach Cregger was very outspoken about how much the movie Magnolia was an influence on that movie in terms of the film constantly changing perspectives with different characters, and the fact that the cop character in Weapons is basically John C. Reilly visually, and they act similarly as well. So, this is not a new thing. I don't know why Tarantino gets the most shit for this. And like I said, there's millions of examples. We can go to Steven Spielberg. We can go to Raiders of the Lost Ark, scenes that are being directly lifted from Lawrence of Arabia, and John Ford movies like Stagecoach. So this is not a new thing, but I might as well get that out in the open, because I'm going to get a million comments already being like, oh, Tarantino stole from Lady Snowblood, and he made an awesome movie out of it. And Kill Bill takes influences from about a million different movies outside of Lady Snowblood. There's influences from Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movies. There's influences from Italian giallos and Sergio Leone Western movies, and you name it. It's a hodgepodge of all these great grindhouse genre movies, and it makes a movie like Kill Bill. I'm not going to complain about it. I think that's pretty awesome. So with that out of the way, let's talk about a movie that I'm only watching for the second time. I own the Criterion Blu-ray of it. And I ended up getting this movie not because of Kill Bill, but because of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies, which I also have the Criterion box set of that. I fell in love with those movies, and I found out that the manga that those movies were adapted from, the same writer who wrote Lone Wolf and Cub also wrote the manga for Lady Snowblood. I was like, oh, all right. And then it was part of the Criterion Blu-ray, and this movie is also available to watch on HBO Max, just like the Lone Wolf and Cub movie. So if you haven't heard of this movie and you like what I have to say about it in this review, that's why I recommend you go and watch it. And Lady Snowblood is in many ways very similar to Lone Wolf and Cub, in that both of these movies are very bloody, very grindhouse in aesthetic, but also are visually very well shot and very artsy to look at. Lady Snowblood even more so. I think this is one of the most visually stunning movies like ever. I absolutely love the look and the feel of this movie. There are some pretty funny, outlandish, campy moments that take place in Lady Snowblood, but for the most part, I think the biggest difference between this movie and the Lone Wolf and Cub movies is that this one is a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more gritty, a little bit more grim, more character focused, and it actually has something to say about the cyclical nature of revenge and the emotional hollowness that comes with revenge. It's actually in many ways kind of an anti-revenge film, which is weird because we get a lot of revenge-based violence in this movie, all of which is gloriously photographed and looks super awesome, but the movie kind of has an anti-revenge message at its core. So it's one of those movies that kind of gets to have its cake and eat it too, which elevates it to another level as far as I'm concerned. The movie centers around the character of Yuki, which is Japanese for snow, who is played by Miko Kaji, one of the most famous and influential Japanese movie stars of all time, who also happens to sing the theme song for this movie, which is also featured in Kill Bill, which is super awesome. So Yuki was a child that was born solely for the purpose of having revenge for her mother. Her mother's husband and previous child were both murdered by this vicious, evil gang. The mother was then sexually assaulted and kidnapped by one of the gang members, where she ends up killing him, and then she ends up going to jail for it, and then she ends up fornicating, to put it nicely, with a bunch of guys in prison in order to get pregnant and to have the baby be born and taken out of the prison and trained to take on her vengeance for her life being ruined, for her being sexually assaulted, for her husband and her previous child being brutally murdered. And then from there we see Yuki being trained by a priest who is training her in all the ways of being an effective and athletic warrior who is vicious and cunning, but also very sneaky and stealth-like. And that scene also is kind of reminiscent of the scene where Beatrix Kiddo is being trained by Pai Mei. And then once she becomes an adult and is fully trained, she has to take on her mother's revenge by going after these 4 specific characters that are a part of this gang that ruined her life, and that's basically the sole purpose of her existence. So from there, you would think the movie would be fairly straightforward and standard, where it's like, okay, Yuki's been trained, she's grown up now, and now she needs to, like Kill Bill, cross off these 4 evil characters on her list and kill them to get revenge for her mother. But like all great revenge movies, things don't go according to plan, and that's where this movie gets surprisingly kind of subversive in some areas. One of the first characters she has to go after is now a single father who has a child, and he's an alcoholic, and he's also a gambling addict, and his life is kind of in the shitter. Yuki ends up crossing paths with the daughter and is sympathetic towards her because she has to kill her father because of what he did to her mother. And the character who is the daughter ends up coming back later in the movie, kind of highlighting the cyclical nature of revenge and bringing that theme home, which I think is really, really brilliant and surprisingly thought-provoking for a movie that's as cartoonishly bloody and action-packed as this one is, which just makes it even more awesome. So Yuki ends up killing him on the beach in this very amazingly photographed scene. I really can't undersell just how visually stunning and poetic this movie is. I mean, it really takes the movie to another level. It's just so goddamn gorgeous and well executed. Things take a dramatic twist when she realizes that one of the other people on her list that she has to kill has already died, or so she thinks so. And then she also runs across a writer who has been tipped off by her master priest to write stories about her and kind of make her a bit of a legend, while also being a way to lure one of the members, the only female member of the evil gang, to Yuki so she can kill her to get revenge for her mother. And that's another really brilliant scene where she's going after that female crime boss, and she's killing all of her henchmen and stuff like that. But to give her the dissatisfaction of not being able to get her revenge, Yuki finds that she's committed suicide by hanging herself. But she's so pissed off that she cuts her in half from the waist and lets her rain blood. It's pretty metal. And then we get a really big, unique twist in this movie where we find out that one of the henchmen that Yuki has to kill at a graveyard faked his own death, and that his son is the writer who has kind of had this connection with Yuki, kind of highlighting the unpredictable nature of revenge and how things can't go as smoothly as you might want them to. And this all culminates into a really epic conclusion where we get more limbs being chopped off, more awesome fight sequences, more great close-ups of Yuki's eyes, which are mesmerizing and beautiful as they are deadly and ice cold. She unfortunately has to end up killing her love interest while also trying to kill that gentleman's father. And when we think that Yuki's going to die from her injuries after her final battle, that's when we see the daughter character earlier on in the movie who swore revenge on Yuki for killing her father, stabbing her, and then we see instant regret on her face, and then she runs off, and then Yuki's kind of in the snow, and we get this beautiful theme song that the lead actress sings. where we think she's dead, and then the sun rises up, and then we see that Yuki is actually still alive, and that's basically the movie in a nutshell. There is a sequel to Lady Snowblood that I still haven't seen yet, but the common consensus seems to be that it's nowhere near as good as the first movie. I'm still going to watch it, and if I feel like it's worthy talking about, I'll probably do a review on it. But the thing about Lady Snowblood that I mentioned at the beginning of this review that I think is so interesting is, like, in many ways it's an anti-revenge film while also giving you all of the satisfying, well-staged, and genuinely entertaining revenge action sequences. The movie showcases in more ways than one the hollow nature of revenge, and that even when you get your revenge, you know, you still haven't really changed anything. And then along your way, along the path of revenge, odds are you're going to set somebody else up to go on that same path of revenge, and it's a vicious cycle that seems to never end if you lead this path. And then what makes her character kind of complex, although not very realistic, but this is based off of a Japanese comic book after all, is that her character, her sole existence is specifically for revenge. That's the only reason she was born. So how does a character like that find her humanity? This movie kind of touches upon that in a couple of surprising ways, mainly through the relationship that Yuki shares with the writer. So there's actually some heart to this movie. There's some intelligence to this movie, and there's also so much badassness. And it should go without saying that if you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino and you are not familiar with Lady Snowblood and you've never seen the movie, it's very accessible to watch. It's available to stream for free on HBO Max. I believe you can also rent it digitally on Amazon and Fandango and stuff like that. I highly, highly recommend this movie. I think it's not only genuinely fun and action-packed, but it's surprisingly thought-provoking and has a lot of depth as well. So anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on Lady Snowblood. I think this movie is super awesome, but I would love to hear from you guys. For the people who have seen this movie, what are your thoughts on it? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? And also let me know on what your thoughts are with Tarantino being very obvious with his movie inspirations and taking elements from other movies and putting into his movies. What are your thoughts on that? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.